Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fundamentals with Matt Burk. I am your host, Matt Burk. This series is designed to help people understand everything you need to know about how and why to set up or not set up a fund. And I like to bring on guests that have run funds and are running funds. And today I've got Max Sharkansky, from co-founder and partner at Tryon Properties. And Max has been actively involved for years in the multifamily space on the West Coast. I actually believe I met Max probably 2013, 14, somewhere in there. And we were involved in helping Max set up that first fund years ago. I know he's done a number of them since then, and we'll talk about that and more here today. So welcome, Max.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be on.
Yeah, so I know that you're actively involved in multifamily. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background, kind of where you came from, how you got into multifamily space, and give us a little bit of your origin story to give people some context of your background.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in LA and never really left up until recently. Went to Loyola Marymount University, graduated, and went straight into real estate, working at Marcus and Millichap. I was a broker for about 5 years. In year number 4, my partner Mitch and I decided we wanted to be on the buy side. And, we were sitting around having dinner and said, we're doing great, but our clients are doing a lot better than we are. So why don't we go to that side of the business? And we bought our first couple properties at the end of 05. We continued buying into 06. October of 06, we left our shops and hit the ground running with 4 or 5 properties in portfolio. And then we had just started to sell the early ones, and we bought 1 or 2 more, and we sold them in 08 prior to the crash. And we changed our strategy from value add multifamily to buying non-performing debt secured by multifamily. We had a really good run in 9, 10, 11, 12. We did not do a single deal during that period that we bought from an individual or organization that owns and operates real estate. Everything that we did was bank business, lender business. We did about 20 deals in 9, 10, 11, 12, and it was a combination of about 15 non-performing loans and about 5 REOs.
Yeah, were you buying those with the idea that you're going to take them back and do the value add and run them, or just make the money on the loans themselves and flip them, or trying to work them out, or what?
The former. The plan was always that we would have to foreclose, renovate, manage, lease, and then sell. Mm-hmm. And we had an advantage over a lot of the people in the marketplace that were trying to buy notes too. We were able to get more aggressive with pricing, and we understood it better because we managed the real estate as opposed to like ex-finance guys that had gotten into it during the GFC that were just trying to arbitrage, where they were buying the note, foreclosing and selling. We would buy, foreclose, do a light reno because, at that time it was not accretive to put in stone countertops and plank flooring.
Yeah.
You just cleaned up the units, leased it back up to 95% occupancy because this stuff was 50, 60% occupied.
Yeah.
And then we would sell it within 18 months.
So how did you capitalize those early deals when you're buying those notes? Where did you get the capital to acquire the note?
So we had sold our portfolio in 08 and early 09, and we had some of our own cash plus our investors, and we just kept rolling as fast as possible. So whatever finite amount of investors we had at that time, we were able to keep rolling over the capital. Unlike now where we've got 1,500 plus investors, back then we had less than 20. Yeah. And that's how we capitalized it. And then coming out of the downturn in 2012, we went back to the value add business.
Yeah, and so when you coming out of those, so what did you do? The exit on those? You just basically got them up to stabilization, then you looked to exit and turn them, and not really try to do all the value add, which of course, right coming out of the downturn, you didn't really need to do all that. Then you recapitalized it. So then you look to describe beyond that. Now you're going into the value add business, right? 2013, 14.
Right. So 2013, we picked off our last REO that we bought from Citibank. It was like 150 units in Sacramento that we bought for like $5 million, which now is worth 23, 25. Yeah. And we cleaned it up, renovated it, leased it, got it from 50% occupancy back to 95 and sold that. And then we just, got back into that business. That's how we started, right? So 05, 06, 07, we're doing value add.
Yep.
GFC hits, we're doing NPL and REO. And then as the market recovers, we're going back to value add. And we were doing about 5 to 7 deals a year. That never really changed much up until recently. And the only thing that changed was our average deal size. So we were going from like 3 million to 5 million to 10 million to 20 million. Last year, 2022, our average deal size was 63 million. And we opened an office in early 21 in Miami to cover the Southeast. I now live in Miami. So our Miami office covers Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, and our California office covers NorCal, Oregon, and Colorado. And we're looking to get into Arizona and some other states.
Yeah.
So now our deal volume has gone up. Now we're doing, call it 8 to 12 a year, 10 to 12 a year. And we're doing about $500 million in volume annually. Yeah. This year will of course be down because of what's going on in macro, but we'll probably get back to that, 600-700 million by next year.
So let's go back and we'll talk a little bit about today's market conditions here in a moment, but like going back to when you decided to set up that first fund. So presumably you were doing those deals kind of one at a time, so you're syndicating them, I guess, right? You're raising money
Correct.
from investors on a one-off basis. They're picking and choosing which deal they want to go into.
Correct.
And then at some point you make a decision to do a pooled investment fund. Like what sort of precipitated that decision, and then what was the differences between what you found when you launched it versus your expectations?
What precipitated it is probably the same thing that it does for a lot of people, where you just want to have some discretionary capital. It's just so challenging, on every single deal, every single dollar has to be raised, and we still aren't in an element of that. We're now on our fourth fund. Target raise is 100 million. Given our average deal size, we can't capitalize all these deals only with the fund. So what we do on all of our deals is we do a piece of the fund, and the rest of it is either a syndication or a joint venture.
Yeah.
But now with our fund, we've got money for earnest money. We've got a certain slug of the syndication that we can allocate towards our fund and not have to worry about 100% of it, maybe half of it.
Yeah.
And that's how it's evolved over the years. So that first fund that you guys helped us form was a $13 million fund. Then we did a $28 million fund. Then we did a $50 million fund. Now we're on a $100 million.
Yeah. Yeah. And as time has gone on, so recently, I say you've grown from doing $3, $4, $5, $6, $10 million deals up to $63 million on average now, right? That's a big jump. What are you finding out there in today's world in terms of what's available, and kind of how's market conditions impacting your decision making today?
Well, I think we're past the period of the massive bid-ask spread, which you have in every bear market. Once the market starts to drop, a lot of people don't want to sell for those new prices, and the market comes to a screeching halt, which it basically did last year. And now it's starting, we're starting to see some transactions take place. We're involved in 2 transactions. We just got awarded a deal in Denver, Colorado, with a 5.5 cap in place, going to a 6.25. I'll call it 6 untrended without doing much renovations. If you do the renovations, you'll be at 6.25, and then with growth, you'll be high 6s on a 5-year hold, maybe a 7 on a 5-year hold. A year ago, that deal trades for 3.5, probably solving to 4.5, 4.75, and with growth, you're at like 5.25, 5.5. I mean, it just, the market really changed. So that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing more of those now. We're seeing the deals that are trading start with a 5 handle on the cap rate.
What are you doing for debt on that kind of stuff in today's world? What are you finding in the debt markets?
We're finding the agencies to be the most reliable source of debt. We have 2 properties under contract. We've got one in Miami and one in Denver, the one that I just mentioned, and we're going to the agencies for both of those deals.
Straight out of the gates.
Straight out of the gates.
Yeah. So is there's not a lot of value add component to those then, or?
No, there is, but you've got a much higher in-place cap rate. So with agency debt right now pricing in the mid 5s, you can get 60 to 70% debt. It works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to go bridge.
Are you, and how are you guys coming on your latest fund at $100 million? Are you finding, what's the capital raise environment like out there for you from a investor standpoint? Is the investor interest still out there? Is it strong? Is it waned? What are you seeing?
So we just launched the fund. We're only about a month in, and we've had some decent demand. So, we're raising, we have activity every day. People are interested. Our IR team is on phone calls daily. That said, yes, of course, it is more challenging in this environment, but we expect that to thaw by the back half of the year.
Over the years, Max, as you guys have gone toward that fund model, what have you done from a capital raise standpoint? I mean, how has that evolved? I get that question all the time of people trying to raise money in a fund versus one deal at a time. What are the differences, and sort of what have you done to build up that capital raise muscle to be able to fill up those funds?
Well, some of it is just organic, right? It's the same investors investing with us over and over throughout the years, and then they tell their friends who tell their friends. So there's a lot of word of mouth and a lot of intro. We've done a lot of online marketing. We've done a lot of crowdfunding. The conference circuit, I would say, is probably more for joint ventures than it is for fundraising, but we've done that as well. We've done a little bit of work online with some quote unquote financial influencers, people who have their investors, and we've done marketing deals with them, or they've sent investors to our fund. So it's been, an array of different marketing strategies.
Yeah. Anything that you find has been the kind of secret sauce to the thing that's worked the best for you?
I would say the crowdfunding has been really, really good over the years, and we've been able to raise a ton of capital that way. We've done okay with online marketing. We've done great with influencers where, we've done marketing deals with them and they introduce us to their investors. So those have been the best.
Yeah. Yeah. What about asset management? I know that's sort of going into any one of these types of downturns or situations. It's kind of like whatever you got in your portfolio is what you got, and for better or worse, right? You got to live with it. How is that going on the asset management side?
Operations are going okay. We hit a big wall. Everybody hit a big wall, macro. There came a point middle of the year last year, maybe fall, where there was just no more rent growth. It started to feel like there was household deformation as opposed to household formation, because rent became so unaffordable. People just couldn't afford it anymore, and they started to bunk up, move back in with families, and vacancy started to go up a little bit. So we had to manage through that. We are managing through that, and we're trying to get our occupancies back up, trying to get them as high as possible through the bear market. Evictions are obviously a problem. A lot of the country wasn't paying rent. They got ERAP, they got aid. So that bubble's kind of burst, right? Because now everyone's bad debt is up, delinquency is up. So we're managing through that. And then, of course, you've got debt. Cost of capital is skyrocketed. We've got a fair amount of floating rate debt, and but it's mostly capped, so we're managing that as well. We have our hands full right now. Operationally, we definitely have our hands full, but nothing tragic. We're not over leveraged, and we feel pretty good about our position now, and especially where it's going to be by year end.
Yeah, I'd say the floating rate debt is a challenge, right? Because you do these heavy value adds, it's hard to get anything but floating rate debt. And at the time, you're looking at the cost of the caps, and based on all the forward curves, the cost of the cap appears a little bit unreasonable. So, sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. That's definitely been something that we've seen both in some of our multifamily stuff and a lot of folks that we work with, that you better not be over levered with the variable rate debt, right? Because that stuff, it's gone from mid 5s, 6s, 7s to 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s very, very rapidly.
Very rapidly. And for a moment there, that was the go-to product for value add, right? Because cap rates had to compress so much, you're not going to get debt from a traditional lender, an agency lender, because you're buying at a 5.25, taking it to a 6.5. That didn't exist, so you have to get bridge. because everything was a 3.5 cap. So you got to go get bridge debt that was floating at 3.25, 3.5, but now it's all 6.5. So you got to run pretty fast. You got to run pretty fast to keep up with that debt service.
Yeah, and it's in markets like this, man. I mean, I think for what we've seen is asset management is huge, right? You got to really drill in and just it's an asset by asset, property by property deal to get in there and do what you need to do on each property, right? And if you got in at the right basis, generally you're gonna be okay. Paid too much,
Exactly.
Got floating rate debt, and you can't manage the asset, not gonna be pretty.
No, it's not. We're vertical though. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. We've property managed almost since day one, and we've got 100+ employees, and our operational team is all over every asset, talking to people daily on site. So really hands-on management.
Yeah. So you moved out to Miami, huh? Is Mitch out there with you, or is he still on the West Coast?
He is. I moved out here with my wife and kids in June of 2021. And he moved out here pretty much same timing, 2022. You got to wait for the school year and you move out. And he really likes it.
What prompted the move from a couple of LA guys from off to Miami?
So with me moving out here, it was really all business. It was two reasons, business related. Number one, we wanted to diversify away from the West Coast. At the time that COVID started, 100% of our portfolio was California and Oregon. We started buying in Colorado into 20, 21, 22, but 100% was in California and Oregon, and these are very unfriendly to business states, especially our business. It's unfortunate. Over the last 4 years, I would say since about 2018, 2019, the governments there have just become vicious towards our industry. And we saw what happened to a lot of our peers in New York, where they passed the vacancy control law and a lot of their equity was wiped out. So we wanted to make sure we were well diversified, and that doesn't happen to us. So that was one reason. The other reason, we just thought there would be so much more population growth in the Southeast with everything that was going on in Central Florida and South Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. And I think we were right. We made this call September of 2020 that we were going to open up the office, and ever since then, it's just been gangbusters with population growth.
Yeah. So what's your prognostication on the market here? Where do you think we are in the whole downturn, and what do you think's coming down the pike here with the Fed and interest rates and how that impacts commercial real estate? I know you don't have more of a crystal ball than the next guy, but just best guess.
I think the Fed has 2 rate hikes left, 25 and a 25, and I think they're done. I think that there's a lot of latency in the marketplace where the 6% CPI print with 5% core is pretty deceiving because the numbers it's using are trailing 12. For example, in the CPI print that came out last week, it showed that shelter costs, which you and I know very, very well, it's close to our hearts, are still increasing, which they obviously are not. That's based on data from a year ago. Shelter costs are down. They're not going up. So is that 6% CPI and 5% core really 6 and 5? No, probably isn't. It's probably more like 4 and 3, 3.5 and 2.5. And I think the Fed knows that. So I think they're going to over tighten right now and probably hold there. And then we'll see how we land. I'm hoping there's going to be some sort of a quorum of banks with the government that help First Republic and some of these other banks survive. And I think we get through this through the next 6 to 9 months.
And what are you guys coming out of all this? What do you see in your future in terms of your asset strategy and game plan and growth for your company?
Oh, we're buying. We're fully in the market. We're buying. We haven't seen cap rates like this in a very, very long time. Not quite 2012, 13, but definitely 14, 15, 16, probably that period. We're buying 5.5 caps in Denver. We're buying brand new property in Miami at a 4.8 cap, and we're solving to a 5.5 cap just by burning the loss to lease on a brand new core deal in one of the hottest markets in the country. So we're extremely excited, practically salivating at the opportunity to buy properties at these prices that are 25% below where they were a year ago. Multifamily real estate does not go down in value very often. It goes down once every 8 to 10 years, and it's down severely right now, and we want to take advantage of that.
Yeah. How much longer you guys got on this current fund? You just say you just launched it, so your raise period goes for what, the rest of this year or something? And
2 years. So yeah, 2 years we'll raise and allocate at the same time. And I think we'll probably place it over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're coming toward the end here, Max. Thought a couple quick questions. What you got? Any recommendations to the audience for a book, audiobook, podcast, quote, something that you're finding inspiring these days?
Last year I read Atomic Habits and really loved it. I hadn't read a self-help book like that in ages, and I thought it was really good. And you've got to love books that break things down in a simple and concise fashion on little bits of self-improvement and how you could do that. I thought that was a really, really good book. I read the David Goggins bio, which I really enjoyed. And now I'm reading the Michael Ovitz bio, which is amazing. You know, a little bit of classic Hollywood. So yeah, those are a few examples.
Cool. What anything else cool you got looking forward to? I mean, Miami out with the kids, your vacations, traveling anywhere, or anything exciting?
The kids are really loving Miami. It's a great city for kids. You get 12 months of beach. They're constantly on the beach, in the water, you know, taking small boats out. You can get for the day. So the kids love it here. And then hopefully, you know, we still go back to LA quite a bit because we have an office there and I got a lot of family there. So we're going to take them back to LA for some of their spring break. And for me, it's not really any downtime because I go to the office there every day.
Yeah. I mean, you sound like a busy guy, man. So appreciate it. How do people reach you if they want to get out to you? LinkedIn or email, website? What's your preferred method?
Best way to get a hold of me is email max@tryonproperties.com. max@TRION, like Nancy, properties.com.
Okay, Max, great seeing you again. It's been a long time.
Likewise.
Congratulations on all your success. We'll have to catch up here one of these days. Next time I'm in Miami, we'll hook up.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. All right, I'm off next week for spring break. I'm going to be down in California and Max's old stomping grounds and doing a little bit of stuff with my family and folks. So we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks with our next guest, Sif Kafagi of TechVestor, who just came in second place at the Verivest Best Ever Pitch Slam at the Best Ever event last week. So looking forward to having Sif on. Thanks again, Max. In the meantime, everybody, stay sharp.